Voices from the Mausoleum is brought to you by the You Run Podcast Network and yourunpodcast.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to the episode Found Footage Fridays.
Hi.
We are continuing our chats about Paranormal Activity Franchise, and we have made it through 1 through 4, and now we get to talk about the marked ones.
Getting ready for that poster drop.
I still didn't do it right. Okay.
No. I think if it's a full-length poster, it's just...
Yep.
Because you usually have it centered into the middle, right?
Yeah, I usually add it, post edit. But the other thing is I have an image made that I just replaced the little image, so it takes up the same amount of space.
Oh. That's right.
Okay.
We could use this big-ass poster.
Get the point across. So this one came out 2 years after the other one came out in 2014. The short synopsis: when a young man becomes the target of a malevolent entity, he must uncover its true intentions before it takes complete control of him.
Yeah, this is a cool one. This is a really fun one.
God, I totally agree.
You know, this I think, right, because it is a sidestep sort of from the main family, sort of, again, very similar to the fourth one. But we get to see it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. And different characters, different culture, different but still sort of filling in the gaps of the lore and really explaining the process a bit more. Or at least showing, because we get Hunter and Katie and all of them, but then we really get to see it through through Jesse's experience and what it would be like, I guess, once Hunter's older, right? I guess it's sort of like a paralleled experience.
Yeah. No, I think the way that they tie this in is just really, really well done. So this is what, and I mentioned this in the previous episode, this is the kind of situation I wanted in 4. I wanted something like this where it's just completely different. It doesn't follow the same, A plus B equals C kind of thing. It's very like on its own, but still, to me at least, felt like a Paranormal Activity movie. We get the different technology, which we talked about. We're getting different takes on the people doing the technology, or using the technology rather. This whole little like apartment complex. I don't know. There's just something about the way that this is set up that just completely worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still connected to the main story.
It is.
But it fits, but it is refreshingly different. And like you said, the technology, like at this point, right? So this is a 2014 movie. So cell phone recordings are definitely in full swing at this point. So now we get the cell phone footage. I think it's predominantly cell phone footage.
He has a hand cam that he uses.
Oh, the GoPro. Or he was using the GoPro, right?
Oh, yeah, GoPro. That's what it is, yeah.
Because I remember, because he put it on the thing, or the basket,
which is
or whatever.
Perfect for the time frame, because that's when everybody started using GoPro to do everything. So, I mean, it just fits in with the time,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that the and because this is so important especially when you're watching found footage, I feel like, I really just I cared so much about him as a character that like I was just super invested in what was going on. Like it was so like, even from the very beginning of the movie, before anything happens, I was just like, this is a kid. After you turn 30, everyone is a kid, in case you didn't know that. But he's a young adolescent. He I just cared about him, and I was invested in him. And I love when they can make these younger characters like this, not just these irritating characters that you just despise. That happens so much to me.
Yeah.
Like so many times when they have these younger roles done, the teenager-y type, younger or whatever, it's like they're so irritating. And I just didn't find him irritating. I found him endearing, a little not smart sometimes, but I think overall still very believable. And it made the rest of the experience a really positive one.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's just sort of this fresh high school graduate, bright future, kind of, just wants to enjoy his last summer before the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So it's not, and yeah, definitely not annoying. I think all the kids were pretty, it was a great cast, the friends.
Yeah.
Because we had Jesse, Marisol, and
What's
Hector.
the other guy's name?
Hector, right?
Hector. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they were
Uh,
great.
right, that's not
Um,
great.
and I love the use of like, as far as the storyline goes, the use of the neighbor or the person who used to live downstairs and like,
Hmm.
I don't know, like I'm telling you, like if this had been four, I would have been so happy. Like because it
Yeah.
really did go its own path while still being able to connect and incorporate things. And I mean, for which we'll get into with spoilers, there's very obviously it's 100% connected, but it's like there are things that they were just able to take this complete sense of uniqueness and then make it still, I don't know, it just worked really, really well. I liked it.
Yeah.
And the scares in this are really good. This one went back to like the first one's ability to build up tension and suspense while
Yes.
you're watching.
And like earned jump scares,
Yes.
really cool special effects in this
Yep.
one.
Yeah.
And not in like an oh that's too much CGI because clearly there's CGI in this movie, but
Sure.
it's done
Yeah.
in such a cool way.
Yeah. And it's aged really well. Like it still looks good,
And I
in my
think
opinion.
that's the benefit of it being found footage, right? Because then you could sort of hide it behind darkness and kind of not as great quality footage, and
Sure. Yeah.
so like I think
Yeah.
that's a great use of CGI.
Yeah. No, and it's and I think the other thing too with it being having those types of effects is they chose those moments very carefully. So it's not too much of it. They are just like, okay, enough. Like there's
Hmm.
a mix of the two things between the practical and the CGI, but the CGI was chosen very well and it's aged phenomenally. I mean, it still looks really good. And of course, by this point, I mean, even in the original, this had a big backing. It's not like it came out of somebody's like $300 budget that they had to save and put money away. Like
Oh
this
yeah.
this was backed by a bigger production company, and so it shows.
This was what Wiki has it for. It's a range somewhere between 5 and 9 million was the budget.
Yeah, I think 5 million is what I've read too, so that's got to be, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
a
then you also take
lot.
into marketing goes into the budget
Sure.
as well, and
Yeah. That's a lot for a found footage movie.
oh yeah.
A lot. Like found footage movies are made for nothing, like
Hmm.
um not for nothing to the people who have to make them, but you know what I mean? Like as far as
Well,
financially, like
yeah,
they're not, there's not a lot, there's not a ton of them that get that kind of money to do things like this. So
no, because we don't get a lot of big budget Hollywood found footage anymore. This was sort of a rarity at the time. Even
it
like this
really was.
was just this franchise.
It was what, 7 years after Blair Witch?
Blair Witch was
Eight.
'99,
Yeah, and the first one came out in 2006.
so made in '07,
Oh
but
07.
got it's wide in '09. So 10 years
Oh
later.
09. Okay, so 10 years.
Yeah,
Upside
yeah.
Down 6, 2009.
6, 7
Um,
was sort of like yeah, and then it got reworked and then got more money to.
that's right, because I was living on my own. I was still in high school in 2006, but
Yeah.
2009 I was not. So, okay. What do you rate this?
Oh, this is a solid 9 for me.
Yeah.
I feel like 10's got to be a perfect movie. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but this is a near perfect Paranormal Activity film. I think so. It gets a 9 for me.
Yeah, it's a 9 for me as well. I love this one. Like I really do. Like when people go on tangents about how bad this movie is, I'm just like, I feel like they didn't watch the same movie. I'm like, how? How do you feel? But it's, I think sometimes when you're talking about a franchise that's established, people get really upset when you do something different,
Yeah,
but then they get mad when you redo the same stuff. So I guess what do you do? But I think like it just had such a specific following that people just wanted more of the same and they didn't want it to take risk. And so when it did, next of kin as well, people were like, I hate it. And I was just like, I was eating it up. I'm like, this is what I've been wanting. Like, since I think, the first three around the same story were fine. But once you got to four, it's like time to do something different. And
yeah.
this really did do something different. And it's beautifully written. It works so well. I really, really like this one a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't want to say too much before going into spoilers, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, the scares work, special effects work, characters are great.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sort of earns being its own. Yeah, I don't get why people would hate it. I think it's just the way it really fills in the lore and expands the world is really cool.
Which opens up the door for more movies.
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know we did 4 last week, and that was like very much a film that was clearly just you couldn't do too much with that one family because clearly it was
Yeah.
just you were you, you were beating a dead horse at that point. Clear, I'm sure there would have been a way to do it that was good, but anyway,
Sure.
let's go on to spoilers.
Yeah,
Let
I'm
let
ready.
me throw up the banner here so we can really dive into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea of so we find out that Jesse is adopted, right?
Yep.
Or his birth mom or his mom died in childbirth, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
right. Mhm.
right. So this whole idea like that he is a marked one. So he is sort of what Hunter is supposed to be, right? Firstborn male
Yep.
used to bring Toby back
Yep.
or really manifest Toby.
Yeah. And in this one, correct me if I'm wrong. I did just watch these, but they do kind of mold together after a while when you watch them all together. Um,
Hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but like didn't his mother go visit the lady that lived downstairs? Like there was proof that
That they were working in the she was yeah. So the coven had their hands in
right.
that yeah her pregnancy and sort of getting it and so
Yeah.
right, so the investigation sort of starts, they're looking into like they're suspecting like the downstairs neighbor being a witch. They sort of that whole
Yep.
moment where they bring the camera down and they're seeing like these naked women painting each other with whatever, right?
Yeah.
Which was very funny. And then
Oh yeah,
and
because they go down the vent or whatever, right?
they go down the vent and the grandma comes in. It's like, what are you doing?
Nothing. Yeah, they're like full blown playing it. That felt realistic.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But yeah, but clearly so we're there, and then they have their friend, there's Oscar, who's sort of like deteriorating and they're trying to figure out what's going on there. They find like VHS tapes, journals, talking about
I love
like
stuff like that. It's very video game-esque. I love that
yeah,
stuff.
they're just sort of like really piecing it together. They're almost like this little ragtag group. It's like the little
It's
Scooby
and
Gang.
little Scoobies. I love it. No, I
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
No,
I
yeah,
think
it was a
that
fun element to the movie.
well, and I think like there's something to be said about a horror movie that can make connect like characters feel relatable and connected in a way where you care about all of them. And they did a really great job with that with this one. I mean, I said before, I really felt connected to Jesse, but I think the connection of the friends just made the entire journey feel
Yeah,
more emotional, more real, more, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And And then we start to get some weird time travel stuff with this one too, which is another
Yes.
additional element.
Yes. When he goes into that like it's a basement, what is it? It's like a where there's like the cloths hanging. It looks like a basement to me,
Yeah,
but I don't and he
there's
starts
like a
moving
trap door
through. That's it. So I guess not technically a basement, but that's what it reminded me of. And it's got
thing.
like
Yeah.
the cloth and stuff hanging up everywhere. And you're just like, this is what I was talking about earlier, specifically this
Mhm.
scene. And there's another one in particular, but this one where you were just like, I don't like that. Like you're watching and you can feel the tension kind of ramping and you're waiting for that moment of like, because
Yeah.
it's coming. But then it's like not quite what you expect because then he finds Katie and Christy. Is it
Mm.
Katie and Christy or just Katie?
Katie and Christy, yeah,
It's both of them, right? Okay.
from
And they're
3.
both just there, and you're like, "Oh my god." And we know who they are because we've seen the
Mhm.
other movies. And it's just this very like it builds up this tension to this moment where it's not quite the same as like an over the top jump scare, but it's just this realization of like how these like the ability and then of course that stuff gets discussed way more even later in Ghost Dimension, but it's just really cool like the way that they chose to connect these. I didn't feel like sometimes I feel like when films try to do that they end up
Mm.
being hokey or they end up not making sense or there's all these things, but this just made sense and it just made everything even more intense for me. And I don't know, like I just really that's one of my favorite scenes in this one is when he goes down and he's going through and they're just there. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess it's not really time travel but it kind of. I don't know. I guess the
No,
spirit
it
world,
feels like it's at least dimensional, right? Because
right?
they're still little girls and this takes place in present day, right?
Yeah. So like, I guess I like the concept of time not really existing in the spirit world,
Yes.
right? The
Yeah.
ghost dimension, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Well, and it kind of
Yeah.
speaks to the level of power that this cult and stuff even have, right? Because to be able to do what they've already shown that they do with like the possession and the taking of the like all that stuff. And then now you're adding this whole other element where you're just like, that's really uncomfortable. Like the idea that like they can be anywhere at any time and
Right.
that's unsettling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is, and then it sort of, I think, highlights and it really sort of exemplifies the or I would say it kind of makes it worse the experience that he's going through, right? Because then you also see Oscar sort of, because he commits suicide, and these are some of like the craziest scares of the movie. It's just sort of like it's a lot of bodies dropping in this movie.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
yeah, no, you're right.
I was like, ooh, we talk about like jump scares, but like pretty effective jump scares because
I
it's
would
also
agree.
really sad. Um,
Yeah.
but he
Well, I
gets like
think
that
you said it
warning.
best because you said that they're earned. I think you said it
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah, they're earned jump scares, because I think it's like there's emotional weight to it. This
Yep.
movie does ramp up tension. I think you have to satisfy tension. You can't just like jump scare for jump scare's sake, right?
God, no. I hate that so much.
No.
Yes.
But yeah, but then you see like this sort of like warning of like where Jesse could end up, because as soon as there's that moment with Christy and Katie that you were talking about, that's
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
when there's the turn for Jesse, right? Where he starts to get really violent, right? He's like picking fights with
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
Um, and there's little parts of that kind of throughout the movie, right? It was at the gas station, and then
Yep.
in the convenience store,
Convenience store. Yep.
and then because he's sort of like, it's fun in games, which is also very poltergeisty, because it's the idea of like, oh, this is funny. Like he does like trust falls with Toby, you know.
Yeah. It reminds me of oh my God, what's the other found footage movie where they chronicle?
Oh yeah, with the power,
I mean,
superpowers. Yeah,
it's a little different because that was Alien, but you get my point though. It's very
yeah,
similar in the sense of like this very young adult way of dealing with this, of what that would look like. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we get, I'm trying to think what, and then it sort of goes from, I mean, there's the real cool time travel point where he ends up in the first movie, which is the
Oh,
coolest
the
part.
house. I loved that scene.
And you get to see the perspective of her screaming for Mika from the kitchen,
Terrifying. That
which
was
is
good.
so cool. Which
That
that
was
was such a
smart. That's
fun,
really smart writing.
yeah. Because then so then you get to really see Katie stab him, which is crazy, because then Katie stabs him and then just like throws it. It's funny logic for Toby, the demon itself, because it's like you lure Mika down to kill him, and then but then you got to bring his body all the way back up just so you can throw it at the camera.
Oh, yeah.
I was just thinking, oh, interesting. I guess it could have just ended down at the, but then we
Yeah.
wouldn't have seen it because they
That's
just had
true.
one camera in the first
Because
movie.
there was no camera downstairs like that the whole time. That wouldn't have made
Now
sense.
with a single camera.
I wonder if that
Um,
part, if they did it that way too, because like the original had so many different endings. It
yeah,
was kind of like, but yeah, no, I love that. The moment he goes through and you realize where you are as a paranormal activity fan, you're like, like,
yeah.
immediately you're like, okay, where is this going? Because like this is cool. Like we're back, we know this place. We know it well. So that was
Yeah.
really smart. I love that sequence. So good.
Um, yeah, but this was the friend Hector that goes back. He ends up back there, right? Because then what happened to? I'm trying to remember. So just
They also end up after that, they end up at like the Coven house, right? They end up in the where they're
Jesse
running
gets
in,
taken
yes,
by the coven,
by the Coven. Yep.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then Marisol and Hector are going to find him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah. That was I really liked yeah, the going back to the other house, I'm mystified by that. I love that so much. It's another reason, like when people say they don't like this one, I'm confused. I'm like, but come on. Like that, if you're gonna pull nostalgia and horror, that's how you do it. Like
it's really
it's
cool. Yeah.
like, and then, yeah, when they're in the Coven house and like all the bad stuff starts happening. Now, this is more of the cookie cutter stuff we're familiar with paranormal, where things just start going crazy. They're in those rooms, or, I think the main perspective is Hector, right? That's who we're looking through, because he
So Hector,
finds,
because Jesse's taken and he's like fully possessed at this point.
yeah, because they see him, or he sees him. We as the audience, we see him again
Hmm.
after he gets to the Coven house, I
Hmm.
think. And then, but yeah, I thought like it was kind of doing the same thing it did in a couple of the other ones, where we go back to this place and like this is like okay. But I liked that we have been seeing these friends work together this whole time, and now we're seeing their friendships be torn apart by this situation and all this bad stuff that's going on. And I felt for him. I was like, you keep holding, like, you already know, because you've seen Paranormal Activity movies, like you already know, like he's not going to be able to save him, but there's still that like nagging in your gut where you're like, please save him. Like, I would really
Yeah,
like for you guys to get out of this okay.
I
And like,
know.
so when that's not how it ends, it's like being upset about something you already knew was gonna happen, but you're upset anyway because you're like, damn, like I really wanted them to be okay. I really was pulling for this group of friends, and well,
Yeah.
that's just not what happens.
Well, when what's her name? I have Allie. When Allie shows up to fill them in on what was going on with Kane's
Oh yeah,
family,
yeah.
I love that. I was like, oh man, he's a returning character. This is the first time we're really getting it in terms of like a chronological sense.
You're right. Yep, yep.
And I was like, oh man, it's gonna sort of be like found footage Avengers, right? It's sort of like they're gonna
Get the
team up.
group together. Yep.
Yeah, they're gonna team up together and take down this coven. And I was like hoping it would sort of that's really where I was hoping it would go for Ghost
Yeah,
Dimension, which we'll get into. Um Ghost
yeah,
Dimension sort of took the finale in a total different direction. But you know, it just there was like there were like there's just those seeds of hope throughout the movie, where I was like, oh man, you just sort of
they did a really good job writing it that way too, because I think that hope in the storyline, as people who have seen the other movies, I don't think we just naturally have that. I think you're right. I think
yeah,
it's seeds planted throughout the whole film that really make you think if anybody's going to get out of it, it's going to be this group of friends. Like, you have
yeah,
confidence in their abilities to survive. And so when that rug is pulled, it really wasn't pulled, but it feels like it was, because that whole time you were rooting for them in a way that I just don't think I've ever rooted for anybody in this franchise. Like, there was just something about them that I connected with, that I really wanted them to be okay. And when they weren't, I was not okay. Like,
yeah,
it just affected me, after the fact.
absolutely. Just other facts. I was looking at my notes here.
Yeah.
We do get the name of the coven, the midwives, officially in this one,
Yes.
right? Because I don't think this is the first time we get because Allie apparently because that's the thing she was doing her research.
She had the stuff. Yeah.
She was like really like doing the work to
Mhm.
figure out what the hell happened to her nephew, you know.
Yeah.
So then yeah, and then I think we get the full
Um,
info of like the demon fully consuming them if the ritual is complete.
yep.
Um,
Lore builds on the lore.
we get the full lore here, yeah.
Yeah. Because I
Um,
mean, when we start this journey of paranormal activity, it's basically like generic demonic possession.
yeah,
There
we know
really
something's
isn't.
left to Katie, but we don't know why.
We have no idea. We literally don't get any of that until 2.
Yeah,
And that's not always an easy thing to do. It's not always easy to go back and add lore, but this franchise, I think, consistently does that well. Where when we're given new information, even though at this point we're 5 movies in, we're just like, yeah, I'll take it. Sounds good. Like, we don't even really question it. I think that using that character for that was really, really smart. It's the equivalent of like an info dump, but it's handled with care, so it doesn't feel like an info dump. It just feels like a conversation,
yeah,
um, which I liked. I thought that was smart too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Trying to think of any other notes for this one.
The other thing that made me scared that I thought was really good, when he's gonna go fool around with that girl, and then he sets the camera down on the floor next to that trap door.
Oh yeah, and
Oh
then
my God.
that was Oscar, right? That sort of grabbed her, right?
I was like, oh, like,
Oh,
that
because
was
that wasn't a
good.
supernatural scare. That was like a real, like,
Somebody
what
was
the
really
hell?
just under there,
Yeah, like someone
but
was
that was
really
good.
under the floor.
That was good though. I liked it. It was good.
That was a
Talk
good
about
one.
earned scares. That was a good one because you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
obviously we're seeing this because something is going to happen, but we don't really know what yet. We're like, where's this going to go? And then that was good. Like, I really like that scene too.
What else did I really that oh, I love the Simon Says thing rather than just using a Ouija board. That was cool.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
That honestly, the funny thing, that actually kind of made me think of something that Blackwell Ghost would have done.
The experiment, yeah, as
But
as an experiment rather,
so
yeah,
they use the Simon Says game, like where Blackwell uses the alphabet thing or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Because that's also a toy that he kind of rigged right in that one.
yeah,
That
yeah.
oh, going back to the special effects, I did really love just that teleporting moment where he just shows up in the middle of the
That
room.
was good.
It looked really good.
It looked really good. I totally agree with you.
And good jump scare. Just
There's just
again,
so much that happens in this. It really is another example of like once it starts, it really just goes. There's a lot that
yeah,
happens in this film.
yeah, it is, and there's a lot of creepier stuff. I mean, there's the eye pulling. There's like
Ugh,
a
where he's
lot
in the
more like
bathroom.
intense stuff in this movie
Mhm.
compared to the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I'm with
Uh,
you.
and I don't, and not just for the sake of being, you know, there just to be there. Like, it genuinely felt. Yeah.
No. Yeah. I agree. No,
No.
it was all there was never anything that happened that didn't have a place or a purpose that made sense. Like it just all God, the teleportation scene was really good. That was good.
He was like floating up there. Like I was like, this just
It
looks
looked
cool.
cool. No, you're
Yeah.
right though.
It almost had like gave me like Evil Dead vibes, sort of like when like a deadite is just kind of doing its thing, or
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was really, really good. That looked good. I totally agree.
yeah. But I think that's my spiel on it. I don't know if I had any other notes.
Yeah. No,
Other
that's
than
a
loved it.
Yeah, I love this one. If you are somebody, and I mean this genuinely, because I'm a very like open to discussion kind of person. I'm not one of those people that hounds people about their beliefs, but I will argue with you about mine if you try to do it to me. But
Hmm.
like, if you are someone who really didn't like this movie, I would genuinely love to know like what it was about it that bothered you, because especially as people who are found footage fans, as paranormal activity fans, like I'm always interested to see where people are with these things.
Yeah.
What was it that didn't work about this for you? I'd love to know about it in the comments, because this is one that I genuinely like. I love this film. This is one
Yeah.
of my favorites.
Like, because from a writing standpoint, from a performance, from a scares, it just feels like this was such a big improvement from what we got with 4.
I totally agree. I
Like,
think this is number 3 on my ranks. I think it's 3, 1, and marked ones,
yeah.
and then 2. I wasn't as impressed with 2, but I no, I love this one. I genuinely do. So it was everything I wanted 4 to be, honestly, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest.
I think I have to
Um,
go back and look at my ratings. I think I have a lot of ties in there, maybe, because I'm forgetting what I gave 1, 2, and 3. So I have to go back and look.
I
I don't
never
remember.
remember either. And I'll be honest with you, my ratings change.
That's fair.
Sometimes it just hits really good and you're like, man, I love this movie. 10 out of 10. Other times you're not feeling it. You're like, I guess it's all right. It's like 8 out of 10. Like it changes.
Yeah, true, true. It's
But
just
anyway.
sort of that's what's great. It's that's why it's fun kind of doing a series, like a retrospective series look back like this.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I can't remember the last time I watched a couple of these. So it's nice to really sort of, now that I've seen
Mhm.
so many found footage films, thanks to you, it's sort of interesting to go back to like the tentpole franchise and be like, oh, how does
Sure.
it stack up from everything I've seen now? Or has my
Well,
perspective changed? And
and I think it's interesting too, because, when Tom and I did Cloverfield, my original rating for Cloverfield was a 3. I
yeah,
love it now. I love it. But when I first watched it, I hated it. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of everybody else in my ear about it. I don't know if it's because I was so much younger. I don't know if it's because I had seen so much less found footage. But I mean, now granted, I don't think that the actors and stuff that made sense in that movie, because I'm like, I would have given up on the camera a long time ago. But who cares? It's a cool action, fast-paced found footage movie
yeah.
about aliens. Like, it's so fun and it's so good. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's
I
it's
sort of
just
wish.
interesting to see how it changes.
I love seeing every movies like now. Like that's the thing I always look out for now. Being a found footage fan now, right? Is looking at like how do they explain the camera, right? How do you,
Yeah.
how in world does this make sense?
And so many
Um,
times it don't.
oh no, Cloverfield would have benefited had that movie come out when GoPros were a thing. Because then I'm like, okay, well, if they were just clipping
Great.
on a camera, that makes a little more sense.
You would, and to be fair, when you're running for your life, you're not always going to be thinking about that anyway. They could have all. This also would have been good to do with security camera footage too.
Ooh, that would have been different
That would have
building
been something
footage.
that I think could have, but it just has to do with the time that it came out.
If that's the thing is like '09 again, '09, right?
It
Because
came out around the same time. Yeah, around the same time
'08,
as.
'09, right? Because yeah, because if Paranormal Activity, right, '07 when it was first made, so that would be so yeah, handheld camera, home video, that made sense.
Yeah,
Cloverfield, right?
yeah.
It's sort of like we're getting in closer to the social media, but not to the degree where it would have made sense where
Not
he would have
quite.
been
Yeah,
so
yeah,
on it, you know.
yeah. You're totally right. Yeah.
So interesting.
Um.
But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
I this is one that I would always be happy to rewatch. Marked
Yeah.
ones.
I agree. This is one of my favorites. I really love this one. Okay. Cool. Well, that's our thoughts on Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. Next week we will be jumping into Ghost Dimension, which is I think going to be an interesting conversation. So, yeah, we'll be back talking about that one next week. If you're curious what our other thoughts are on the rest of the franchise, they're all in the playlist for Found Footage Fridays. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next
See ya.
time.